Welcome to a world where particles, vibrations, and light collide, a place where leading industry experts and healers come together to discuss controversial topics that will challenge your beliefs and expand your mind. From quantum physics to metaphysics, no topic is off limits, but this is not your typical podcast.
Always be in your integrity, and in your integrity you understand that it is what it is. Energy is until it's not, right? Energy is flowing into your body until it stops flowing because it becomes so clogged up, and then disease begins, right? So be in your integrity. When somebody's saying something that you totally disagree with, don't sit in your mind and go, what an idiot, right? Just say, wow, they're really convicted on how they feel. That's amazing. Bless them in their thoughts. Don't be judgmental in their thoughts. Bless them for having the power to feel the way they feel, even if it's different from you.
It's a show guaranteed to make you question your assumptions and push you to expand your horizons. For those who are already fascinated or passionate about the work of Patti Conklin, this show will give you an inside look into the mind of one of the industry's most renowned figures in vibrational mediation. With over 28 years of experience and a long list of big-name collaborations, Patti's insights and perspectives will inspire and challenge even the most seasoned practitioners. And if you're the skeptic who doesn't believe in vibrational mediation, this show is for you. Healers, doctors, and scientists are just a few of the professions represented by our fascinating visitors that bring their unique perspective to every episode. Join us on this journey into the world of healing within and adventure inside. Our mission is to inspire, challenge, and enlighten our audience with thought-provoking conversations and fascinating guests from a wide range of fields who can shed new light on important issues facing society today. Join us for each episode if you're ready to explore and learn about the latest developments at the intersection of cutting-edge science, spirituality, and self-improvement. Enter a world where waves, particles, and light all meet.
Hi, everyone. This is Patti Conklin with another episode of Healing Within and Adventure Inside. And I am absolutely thrilled to introduce you to my guest today, Dr. Kelly Turner. Dr. Turner and I spoke in 2010, I believe. And then what's also synchronistic, Kelly, I don't know if you know, but our books were released on the same day.
No way, really?
Yes. So,
March 2020,
it was March
14.
Yep, of 14. Yep. So I think it was March 21st or something like that. But yes, it was the same day. And I just thought that was really ironic and lovely. And Radical Remissions is still, I think, #1 in the charts.
And it's still selling all around the world, which is just blows my mind. And Radical Hope, my second book, is quickly catching up. So it's been quite amazing to see how many people want to hear about the healings that you facilitate every day.
Yeah, it's mind-blowing when we think back to, I interviewed he's gonna just have a fit because I can't remember his name, but he developed tamoxifen. And so we were coming from a chemo place, Dr. Craig Jordan. And so he and I had quite a bit of talk about, chemotherapy and how much it has helped people.
Absolutely.
But I think that people really understand now that there's other things to do. And so I'd really love to hear from you where your journey has gone and what you've learned and what really stands out for you.
Well, how far do you want to go back? It's been a long journey. No, it's been wonderful. So, I lost a good friend of mine to cancer when we were both 16. And it was just sort of this wake up call of, wow, cancer can take you at any moment. It can take you when you're just 16, seemingly out of nowhere. And it seemed like this big, bad, scary disease. And after I finished college at Harvard, I wanted to work with cancer patients in a way that felt helpful.
Yeah.
I wanted to give back. So that was really just the plan, Patti, was just to give back and to be helpful. And I honestly never planned for any of this, but I was counseling cancer patients in San Francisco when I came across a case of radical remission. And a radical remission, what doctors call spontaneous remission, is when someone heals from cancer without Western medicine or after Western medicine has done all that it can.
Yeah.
I also include a third category, which is a statistically unlikely cancer remission, when someone combines conventional medicine and alternative at the same time to overcome something very dire, such as pancreatic cancer. So really what I'm studying here are the cancer remissions that doctors say that shouldn't have happened, or I can't explain that, right? The inexplicable cancer healings, that's what I've been studying for 15 years. And I came across that first case back when I was getting my master's, and I said, whoa, this man was sent home on hospice care with stage 4 kidney cancer. And then he came back 3 years later without any evidence of cancer. That is mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And then I went into the PubMed archives to see if there were any other cases like that. And there were over 1,000 of them, all published in peer-reviewed medical journals. I'm sure your friend, Dr. Craig, knows all about them.
Yes.
The problem is that no one knows why these people are healing. And so that's when I decided to continue on at UC Berkeley for my PhD, specifically to study these cancer patients who heal in ways that their doctors can't explain.
Yeah.
And it's been incredible. So, I met you from that original dissertation research. You were very kind, Patti, to answer that email from that little grad student who said, can I interview you for my dissertation? So I want to say thank you for being open to saying yes to really a nobody at the time, just someone who really wanted to study these things in more depth. So thank you for that interview. And I learned a lot from you. During that dissertation, I interviewed not only the cancer survivors, asking them, what did you do to heal? How do you think you healed? But I also interviewed the healers that they went to, because again, when you're sent home on hospice care and your conventional doctor says, the chemo didn't work, the radiation didn't work, we're sorry, but there's nothing more we can do for you.
Right.
It's natural for some people to seek out alternative healers, right? Yeah. That's probably when some people seek you out.
Right.
So that's how I found you, someone that I had interviewed who had healed in part because of their sessions with you. So that was how we met, Patti.
Wow.
And it's all history since then. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, basically after interviewing all the people for my original dissertation and then scouring those 1,000 cases in the medical journals, I ended up putting together my findings, not just in a dissertation, but in a book that cancer patients could read. Mm-hmm. And what I found was that cancer patients who were beating the odds like this were doing 10 things in common. So they were doing a lot more than 10 things each. Right. Some of them made 50 lifestyle changes. But when I looked across all of the data and I said, well, what do they all have in common? It was these 10 healing factors or lifestyle changes. And some of them are physical. We can talk about them.
Right.
Like you would expect: diet change, herbs and supplements, exercise. And many of them, 7 of them, are what we would call mental, emotional, spiritual. Yeah. And that definitely surprised me. But, when you're sent home on hospice care, you change your diet, you take some supplements, you try to do a little walking. And then after that, it's just you and your mind and your soul.
Yeah.
So I guess it shouldn't surprise me that 7 of the 10 are mental, emotional, spiritual.
Yeah, it's so important, just in working with tens of thousands of people around the world, it really comes back to that, the diet change, the supplements, that seems to be a natural occurrence, but really getting in and finding out what's going on, for me, it's kind of an emotional base as it moves forward, and, energy is energy until it's not. And so there's an emotional component that creates that blocked energy that then creates a disease. And I'm always amazed at, people will say, well, I know what it is. I know what created this. But they really, once you get into it, you realize it's something totally different than what they perceive to be the problem. They're like, oh, I know I'm too strict, or I'm too demanding, or whatever. And it's like, well, no, maybe you're too judgmental. And I love seeing the clients that, read what you've written and really follow you closely, and then are willing, and they may be totally literal thinkers and linear thinkers and not really willing to go into that emotional spiritual component. But after they read your book, Radical Remissions and Radical Hope, all of a sudden they're like, oh, well, okay, maybe this isn't so scary. Maybe I'll give someone a call. And they're willing to reach out to people. And I know that you've expanded into courses. Is that for teachers? Is that for practitioners? Is that for clients? How did that evolve? I mean, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess before I talk about, the courses and stuff, I should probably give the disclaimer that I'm not against Western medicine at all.
No,
I am not against surgery, chemo, radiation. I just happen to study people who heal without them.
Yes.
And, it's sort of like the anthropologists who study the Kenyans who run marathons barefoot, right? They're not anti-shoe and I'm not anti-chemo.
Neither am I.
But it's worth studying these anomalies, right? These incredible cases of what's possible for humanity, right? So the other disclaimer that I should say is that I don't have a recipe for healing cancer. The 10 healing factors that emerged from the data in my research are simply that. They are healing factors common among this group of people.
Yeah.
As a scientist, as a research scientist, we can't say yet whether or not these 10 factors apply to the general public, right?
Mm-hmm.
We can't generalize these findings yet because we need to have randomized control trials before we can do that.
Sure.
So I never say, follow these 10 things and your cancer will go away. That's just scientifically irresponsible.
Right.
What's interesting is that other scientists have studied these 10 healing factors in clinical trials, in randomized clinical trials. And they have found that practicing these 10 healing factors or lifestyle changes does significantly strengthen your immune system. So for example, taking a 6-week stress management course has been shown to significantly increase your telomere length. Right? Longer telomeres in your cells leads to less cancer.
Yes.
Similarly, 6 weeks of meditation for beginners, people who've never meditated before and did it for half an hour a day for 6 weeks, turned off their cancer genes. Yeah. Right? So other researchers have studied these 10 factors in randomized clinical trials and shown that these lifestyle changes can be beneficial to your immune system. So that we know for sure. Can it be so beneficial to your immune system that it will absolutely eradicate cancer from your body? We don't know that yet.
No.
But if you're in the mood to boost your immune system, go for it. Dive into these 10 factors. And that's sort of where the online course and then the in-person workshops came about, is that readers would read the book and write to my website and say, could you teach me how to bring these 10 factors into my life? And so we developed a workshop, and then people asked me to teach in, 20 different countries while I was pregnant. And I said, I can't travel anymore. So then I started teaching teachers. And so it's really been this just sort of organic thing. And it shows me that cancer patients out there, at least many of the ones that I talk to at least, are really eager and willing to make healthy changes in their lives. And that's a beacon of positivity for me, just to know that. And so many of the people that I study didn't do any of these things until it was really seemingly too late. And I think that's an empowering message too. One of the survivors in the book Radical Remission, and then he's also going to be in the docuseries that's going to be aired in October on HeyHouse.com. His name is Shin Terayama. He's really the reason I started this research. He's from Japan, and he did everything his doctors told him to do. All the surgery, all the chemo, all the radiation. It didn't work. Sent home, stage 4 kidney cancer. It had spread to his lungs. His doctors were like, he's a goner. Yeah. But that's when he started making these changes little by little. He just started listening to his body, and his body wasn't very hungry. And he said, I'm just going to try just drinking mineral water for a few days here. Mm-hmm. I want to, rest from that radiation and rest from that chemo. So he sort of intuitively went on a little fast, right? A little fast program, a water fast. Then when he did start eating again, he was craving organic vegetables and organic fruits and just really clean food. Then he started going up to see the sunrise because he was just so grateful to not have died in his sleep that night, right? He just
Right.
filled with gratitude because he accepted the fact that he was going to die.
Yeah.
His doctor said it was going to happen. He accepted it. So he was able to start living from a place of pure gratitude for literally every extra day that he was given.
Wow.
And it was from that space that he learned how to meditate almost intuitively up on that rooftop. And then the energy just started flowing, and he sort of discovered chakras and started feeling energy move through him. And he noticed he started feeling better and better. And it, over the course of 3 years,
Yeah.
his health just continually improved. And so, you don't have to do these 10 factors all at once or right away or really intensively. He's a great example of someone who really took baby steps,
Right.
really from a place of intuition, because at that point, he wasn't talking to alternative healers. He had really accepted what his Japanese doctors had told him, which is, you are going to die within 3 months.
Wow.
And so he was really his own healer. And I just love that story that anyone, no matter what stage they're at, can sort of intuitively find their way back to wholeness.
Right. I mean, one of the beautiful things about the intuitive process, as he was doing, is he didn't come from a place of fear.
Right.
Like, I feel like this is a good step for me, and a good, and not listening to the fear factor of, I mean, doctors need to be real from their perspective of what's going on. And people will call and say, well, I'm on chemotherapy, do I have to go off to work with you? It's like, no, I'm not. No, absolutely, stay on your protocol. We'll just add into the protocol that you're feeling comfortable doing. And I think that also helps them with their fear. I had a wonderful client who had read your book about 4 years ago. And I just adored her. And she called, and she was stage 4 breast cancer that had spread to her omentum. And so when I first talked to her, she was diagnosed as stage 4. And she had a feeding tube, and was down to 90 pounds, and just and so we started working. And within 6 months, she was walking. And within a year, she was, hiking 4 miles and eating what she wanted to eat and so forth. And, it was just, she worked hard, but she let go of her fear. And I think that's such a huge piece of saying, okay, and I think that you and I had talked about this, but it was a nun who was really upset. The doctors had given her 6 months to live, and a Catholic nun, and I said, so wait a minute, so you've been a Catholic nun because you feel like that's the path that you were meant to follow? And she said yes. And I said, so you have the opportunity of maybe going home, or have the opportunity of staying. Which part do you want me to feel bad about? and she started laughing, and she's like, that's true, isn't it? And I'm like, well, yeah. And so I think people, according to their faith or their beliefs, I always ask people to take things slow, so that they're moving in a space of wanting, of knowing that this piece is right for them, and not jumping all together, because then that seems like they're coming from the fear space. Right. When you see people who are intuitively following their path, what goes through your mind when they're intuitively finding, whether they're doing a combination of Western and Eastern, or what? What do you think about when you're watching, when you're visiting with them? Or is there just so many people to pick from?
Well, what's interesting about my work as a researcher is that, I'm not counseling cancer patients. I'm not coaching them. I have trained health coaches in my research, and they will work with people through their journey.
Yeah.
My work at this point is just talking to people after they've healed and doing that in-depth interview and that in-depth research. So I actually talk to people on the other side of their healing journey. So at that point, their fear is usually gone. They're so grounded in their intuition. It's an interesting place to find people, because they've crossed the mountain and they've reached the summit, and they're at a very peaceful place. But of course, during my interviews with them, they remember how scared they were. They remember how lost they felt and how they weren't in touch with their intuition. So I get a glimpse of it that way.
Yeah.
What I do find interesting is that a lot of radical remission survivors start off very much in fear.
Yeah.
And so for anyone listening, if you're afraid of dying, that's okay. That's normal. Many people are.
Yeah.
Radical remission survivors are too. The difference is they face it. They work on it. They don't shy away from it, whether that's therapy or seeing a healer such as yourself, or turning deeper into their religion. They look at that, they face the fear of death directly. They don't try to just ignore it. And that's the difference. So again, it's not about feeling happy 100% of the time. That is not what radical remission survivors do.
Right.
They feel their feelings pretty deeply, including their feelings of fear. I think the common thread here is not shying away from what they're afraid of.
Yeah.
Sitting with those deepest fears in meditation and letting the tears come and letting the poor me just wash over you for a bit, so that you can feel it and acknowledge it and say, okay, you're here. I feel that feeling. And now what? Maybe I'll now take an hour to go watch a funny movie and just laugh, right? Just to change it up. So one of the common factors of my research, one of the 10 common healing factors, is releasing suppressed emotions. Mm-hmm. And that includes the emotion of fear, especially that fear of death. But it also includes things like anger or regret or guilt. One of the gentlemen that is featured in the docuseries is a man named Yochanan, and he was diagnosed with a very rare blood cancer that is usually fatal within 3 to 6 months. And he was given 3 months to live.
Yeah.
And he tried chemo for a few days. His body was unable to tolerate it. He just got so sick. He said, I can't do this. So he was really sent home on hospice care. Instead, he made the personal choice to do a GoFundMe and raise money to go to a clinic in Mexico that offered some alternative treatments.
Oh, yeah.
And while he was there, he had many hours to spend, because he was getting these, IV infusions dripped into him slowly and things like that. He had a lot of time to reflect and to meditate. And for him, he really reached some depths of his emotional self and realized there are a lot of things I've done in my life that I'm not proud of.
Yeah.
And that I feel terrible about. Mm-hmm. And also there's some things about my childhood. This is a fabulous Black gentleman who was born on the ghetto of LA, South LA in the 90s. And so he was exposed to tremendous gang violence and tremendous police brutality and a dysfunctional nuclear family that had its own patterns of abuse in it. So really rough childhood. So he also had a lot of grief and a lot of anger towards society and his parents and police and everything. So he had a lot of repressed emotions to try to, unearth and release. And just by doing that inner work, he was able to just shift his emotional self, his energetic self, while also physically he was getting the IVs of the vitamins and things like that. And I'm happy to report that, 3 years later, when I filmed him for the docuseries, he was alive and well.
Wow.
So you just never know how these combinations of facing those emotions, whatever they are, whether it's fear or sadness or grief or anger, combined with physical changes, right? Herbs and supplements, exercise, diet change, the tremendous power that those things can have when done in combination is, as you know, pretty incredible to witness.
It's so amazing. And I love that you're putting it so much in the forefront, that your writing is easy to read. It, people can read your books and really see the hope that this isn't just a one-sided Western statement. Nothing wrong with what the Western doctors are saying, but, maybe you can add in that piece. Are you finding doctors being more open to their patients working with alternative in addition to? I mean, are you talking to people that are really doing both and being supported by their physician?
Really, I am. And that is such a wonderful thing to hear. I think most oncologists these days don't have any problem with the idea of stress reduction. If you're doing some therapy or some energy healing and it makes you feel better and it makes you feel less stressed, they're like, sure, go ahead, do that. And most oncologists don't have a problem with changing your diet to something that includes, significantly more vegetables and fruits, right? I don't know too many oncologists who have a problem with that. The one healing factor that they get a little nervous about is herbs and supplements, and understandably so, right? Because you can have severe contraindications when you combine really strong medicine like chemotherapy with really strong, for example, Chinese medicine herbs.
Yes.
So if you are going to, employ the factor of taking herbs and supplements, you need to make sure you're working with a qualified health professional who is testing, especially like your liver enzymes, to make sure you're not overtaxing your liver. And ideally, you would have an oncologist who's open enough to be in communication with that herbalist.
Yes.
That doesn't always happen. But I tell you, the herbalists who know what they're doing, they know which labs to check to make sure that you're not contraindicating anything with your chemo. And most herbalists, for example, will tell you to stop taking the herbs 3 days before chemo and then start them up 3 days later. And again, that's just to make sure that your liver doesn't get overtaxed.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. So, it's really been wonderful. And shortly after my book was published, my first book, Radical Remission, some researchers from my alma mater, Harvard, approached me and said, we'd like to start studying these 10 factors. And I said, yes, fantastic. Let's do it. So right now we are in the midst of wrapping up a pilot study looking at the benefits of cancer patients bringing in these 10 factors into their life. And these are cancer patients who are going through conventional medicine.
Yes.
And depending on the results of that pilot study, which will hopefully be published in the next year or so, we hope to get funding for a clinical trial, which will take 2 groups of people. Everyone's going to be getting their chemo because, ethically, you can't not give people the standard of care, but we'll randomize it. And half the people who are getting chemo will also bring in these 10 healing factors, these complementary healing factors. And the other group of people will just get their chemo, and that's it.
Yeah.
And then we'll get to see what happens. And it's those kinds of integrative studies that are really going to convince, the AMA to change the standard of care and say, let's make exercise mandatory for people who are getting chemotherapy.
Yes.
It's already happening in Norway. Norway and Australia are leading the way when it comes to people getting chemotherapy. And then while it is, taped to their arm and getting dripped into their veins, they're put onto the treadmill or they're put onto the stationary bike. And the results are unbelievable. These people are having, 50% less side effects.
Yes.
They're not being hospitalized for fevers. Their white blood cell counts are rebounding much faster than the group that's not exercising, right? So
wow,
we're going to start to see more and more of this, truly integrative medicine in the years to come. And I couldn't be more excited.
Yeah. So thankful that that's taking place. I mean, I love it when I have a client that calls and says, my doctor recommended that I come see you.
Exactly.
And, and that's awesome. And being able to talk to an oncologist and say, I think 3 is enough right now. And let's look at other factors of what they can do and then start again. And, a lot of oncologists are just like, okay, that's reasonable. And being able to have those dialogues as a practitioner about, a wonderful person who has every chance of being able to live a healthy life. And, sometimes that's not in the cards. I mean, we know that. But to be able to give them that time, and like you said, getting on a treadmill, getting on a treadmill, stationary bike, whatever, while they're getting chemo is just amazing. And what a great concept, because it's taking their focus off of what's taking place in terms of the chemo and helping their immune system and keeping them active and so forth. I love it. So real quick, let's go through our 10, your 10 modalities, or your, what do you call them? Your 10?
I call them the healing factors.
Healing factors.
That are common among radical remission survivors. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, there's 3 that are physical: radically changing your diet, taking herbs and supplements, and integrating movement or exercise into your life. And we can, go into any detail you'd like for those, but the diet is all over the place. Radical remission survivors eat all kinds of different diets. Some of them are paleo, some of them are vegan, some of them are Gerson, some of them are keto. The one thing they all have in common is significantly more vegetables and fruits.
Yes.
And a reduction of meat, wheat, sweets, and dairy. So those are sort of the broad strokes. And then when you get to the other 7 healing factors, we have taking control of your health, what I call empowerment. So finding a way to feel empowered with regards to your healing journey, so that you're not just this passive person who says, yes, doctor, okay, doctor, right? Someone who feels empowered about what they're doing for their health. Another one is embracing social support. And that's important for anyone going through any sort of crisis, right? You need to be able to ask for help and receive it.
Yes.
And not feel horribly guilty that you're even asking for help. A lot of the radical remission survivors that I've studied, and I've analyzed over 1,500 cases now in the last 15 years, many of them start off having a real hard time with that healing factor.
Yes.
It's hard for them to ask for help, and it's even harder for them to accept it.
Yes.
So that's a big one. And then finding your strong reasons for living. That's another one that I call part of these foundational ones, the ones to really start with, because if you know why you want to keep living in this physical body, then it's going to be a lot easier to make radical changes to your diet.
Yes.
If you're not rooted in why you want to stay living here earthside, then making some of the other changes is just going to be harder. And then finally, we have, some things we've already talked about: releasing suppressed emotions, increasing positive emotions, using your intuition. And then the last one is deepening your spiritual connection practice, whatever that may be. Right. I always like to say radical remission survivors hail from all different countries and all different religions. So whether you're praying or singing or gardening or meditating, anything that gets you into that theta state, that quiet mind, where your breathing has slowed and your immune system is really turned on. It doesn't have to be religious. It can be just sitting and breathing and letting your mind go quiet, right? A very secular form of meditation.
Yeah.
And that's the final factor: deepening spiritual connection practice.
Wow. I had a client once who we had been talking about that. And I said, what is your faith? Because I agree, it's across the world, and whatever the belief system is, whatever their faith is important to work within. And she responded that she was an atheist, and I'm like, that's perfect. I mean, and she's like, do I have to believe in something? I'm like, no, that's where your comfort zone is, and that's where you enjoy being. That's your meditative state. That's your belief system, and that in and of itself is a belief system. And she was just so happy that she didn't have to all of a sudden switch what her core belief was. And I think it's so important to let to encourage people to work within their belief systems and some of that, and just encourage them to be the best they can be while they're going through what they're going through, and not making it a negative is just so important. And I think that's where your research is just showing up such wonderful hope for people in realizing that they too can take those 10 10 spiritual practices or 10, I keep losing that word. I just, oh man.
You should call them whatever you want to call them. I call them healing factors. Some people call them lifestyle changes.
Lifestyle changes, healing factors, but so important. So,
well, you know, hope is, I'm so glad you bring up hope, because a lot of people, you know, hear about my research and they say, well, aren't you raising false hope? And I said, well, it would be false if the stories that I were telling were false, but the stories I'm telling are true.
Are true.
And but they're still rare, right? And I say they're true, but they're rare. Yes. But for example, when Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay first summited Mount Everest in 1953, they were the first humans to do that, right? That we know of. Yes. Since then, more than 3,500 people have done it.
Wow.
So is that because they taught people how to do it? You know, did they have some secret to getting there? No. People needed to know it was possible.
Yes.
And once people knew that it was possible, they're like, oh, I want to try that.
Yes.
Or if they can do it, maybe I can do it. Same thing with breaking the 4-minute mile. You know, a human had never broken the 4-minute mile. Then a human did, a man. And then in the next 5 years, like 20 people had broken a 4-minute mile. So that's where I see sort of the purpose of my research. It's not to raise false hope. It's to show real, hopeful, yet still rare examples of incredible healing. Yes. And by doing that, we can show people you can do this too. Yes. Means you can strengthen your immune system too.
Yes.
Will you strengthen your immune system so much that cancer goes away in your body? We don't know that yet.
Don't know.
But we all don't know how much time we have left on this planet in these bodies.
That's right. That's
so
right.
Why not have a strong immune system until the day you leave this body, right?
Yeah.
What's the harm in that? And so that's where I sit with sharing my research, is that it's not about raising false hope. It's about showing true examples of extraordinary immune function. And when we can see an example of an extraordinary immune turnaround, it lets us know, wow, that's possible.
Yeah.
It's not just once, it's not just twice, it's over 1,500 cases, right? We get, 5 to 10 new cases a week on our website from all over the world.
Yes.
So, and guess what? Before my book, was out in the world, it's not like those 5 to 10 cases weren't happening. They were, but there was just nobody to collect them.
Yes.
So these radical remissions have been happening really since the beginning of recorded history, right? Saint Peregrine's tumor in the Catholic faith, that he's the Catholic saint of healing because he had a spontaneous remission of a cancerous tumor in his leg.
Yes.
So really, for as long as cancer has been written down, we have also been seeing written down reports of spontaneous remission.
Right. And I think that that's what's so wonderful, is having those cases and having them real cases, because, people will come and say, isn't this just psychosomatic? And part of me was like, does it matter if the cancer goes into remission or you have a spontaneous healing? Does it really matter in your mind whether it was psychosomatic or not psychosomatic? And they're like, I guess not. And I'm like, what makes something psychosomatic?
Right. Well, let's take apart that word, right? Psychosomatic means a change in your mind led to a change in your body. Well, we already know scientifically that that's true, right? When you change the hormones that are released in your brain, you change your immune function, right? An increase in oxytocin has been shown to prevent the spread of breast cancer cells. Oxytocin, also known as the cuddle hormone, is released when we have loving thoughts, or if we have thoughts that people love us, or when we cuddle our pet. So we already know as scientists, it's a fact that changes in your brain lead to changes in your immune system.
Yes.
So if someone wants to call spontaneous remissions, I don't call them spontaneous remissions, I call them radical remissions.
Right.
Psychosomatic remissions, that's fine. Diet and exercise and herbs probably had something to do with it as well. So it's not all psychos, it's not all coming from the mind. But I have no problem with that term, because, and it goes back to something you said earlier, Patti, about many of your clients, part of your work with them is figuring out sort of, their emotional state or their emotional past and how that might have contributed to not necessarily their cancer, but the state of their immune system.
Yes.
And what I always like to say when I'm talking about my research is, my research is not looking into causes of cancer.
Mhm.
We cannot say that the lack of these 10 factors is what caused the cancer, and therefore doing these 10 factors cured the cancer. That's way too big of a leap, right? Especially when we know that things like Agent Orange and nicotine literally cause cancer, right? We know that chemicals cause cancer.
Right.
That viruses and bacteria also lead to cancer. So you will never find me saying your emotions caused your cancer. Done.
Right.
There's no evidence for that. The people I study don't say that. So I don't talk about what caused someone's cancer. However, the people I study, what I talk to them about is how they released their cancer or you know, found a way to remission. And for many of them, they started employing emotional, mental, spiritual techniques.
Yes.
And the way I say it is like, imagine, you know, you broke a teapot. Imagine your teapot fell off the ground and you knocked it, or maybe something like Agent Orange knocked it off, right? And so now you have a broken teapot, right? Your body's broken, it's got cancer. If you use glue to put that teapot back together, is it okay to say that a lack of glue caused the teapot to break? It's not. It doesn't logically make sense.
Right.
Something else may have caused that teapot to break. Something else may have caused your cancer. Maybe you went swimming in a lake at summer camp that had, you know, radiation in it. And you just didn't know it, right? So I'm not as interested in what caused cancer, because we really, in my line of research, I can't figure it out, right? These people had cancer 20 years ago sometimes.
Right.
But the fact that they're using mind, body, spirit tools to heal the cancer is incredible, right? It's incredible that you can make changes in your breathing and in your thinking and in your emotions, and in, of course, what you're eating and how you're moving. And that by doing those things, you can stimulate your own immune system to take care of the cancer that may have been there from the radioactive lake you swam in as a kid. Right. So the solution doesn't always have to do with the cause of the problem, is what I guess what I'm trying to say. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. And I think it's really important to point out from my aspect, my perspective of things is it doesn't matter what, you know, in my world, our chi, our subtle energy field, that from a spiritual aspect, our subtle energy field is our immune system. And if everything's traveling in our subtle energy field, then it's also traveling in our immune system, because they're one and the same. And so in order to make that healthy, it's not that we need to go back and tear up your childhood and look at that and regurgitate our life. It's not that at all. It's understanding, and I think you pointed out so eloquently, that people change that mind, body, spirit, that they start doing things and they start thinking differently on how they're viewing their life, you know, and so it's not about regurgitation of life and saying, oh, this caused the cancer, because we'll never know.
You'll never know.
Never know. But it really is about what is it in your life that you can change to make you a happier person, that's going to affect your body in a positive way. You know, one of the homework I give is, what are you going to do for 20 minutes every day that just makes you laugh out loud?
I love that.
Has nothing to do with anyone else. If you were the last person on the face of the earth, what would you be doing for 20 minutes to laugh? And they're like, oh, that's so hard. And I'm like, but it's so important. It's so important to your body and your system when you're going through this, to be able to laugh and find something to laugh. So, you know, I have them write it, put it on the refrigerator, and you know, we follow up for 6 months after working with someone, and it's like, have you gotten your laughter in? You know, have you switched it around, whatever? But it helps them so much to be able to realize there's still a lot of things to laugh about and be happy with. So yeah, I love what you've done in your research and what you've looked at, because it's so critical for people to be able to have that basis to go to be able to read about other people's journeys and how they've been able to switch things and lead a happy, healthy life. So
However long it is.
however long it is, because we're not promised tomorrow. And I think that that's the thing that really needs to come back around, is we don't know how long we have, but we can certainly make it as happy as we choose. So yeah.
I love
Dr.
that.
Kelly Turner, just beautiful. I can't wait to see what's coming up next in your life, and all of the different continuation of research projects and so forth. And I just thank you so much for coming on the show today and being a part of things.
Absolutely. Well, I'm thrilled that we reconnected.